by way of, I guess, the beginning of an introduction, right? We're about to switch gears tremendously from Nashim, which was complex, to Nizikin, dealing with damages. And as a most basic introduction, I would say, the way the Mishnah thinks about damages is split up into, there's many ways to split it up, right? Our Mishnah starts with the word for, so obviously that's one way. But a very, I guess, simplistic view of damages looks at three different groups of damages. And the three different groups of damages are things that are done, let's say by an animal, though it would be the same thing, presumably, if done by a person, right? Damaging with someone's body or goof. A third kind is what we're going to call fire, right? Aish, which in those times, for the most part, meant you started a fire and it spread and burned someone's field or their house or their animal. But if you think of fire, it actually is sort of personal damage at a distance, right? So it's impossible, was impossible in those times to project your body somewhere else, right? But you can send your weapon somewhere else. We have many weapons today that you could send. Then they had fire, right? And the third kind is what we call bar. And bar is essentially a indirect method of damage that involves it doesn't go anywhere. A bar, by definition, is a fixed thing that an animal or a person or something has to walk onto or into. But the bottom line is that a bar is something that a person can use to cause damage. And if they did, they would be chayav to pay for that damage. So that's three categories of damage that we are certainly going to discuss. Now, our Mishnah starts by saying there are four. So let's start the first Mishnah, Masechet Bava Kamma, Daf Bet, Arba Avot Nizikin, right? There are four archetypes. I'll use the word avot, though that's not clear if that's what it means. Four major categories in damage. Hashar, an animal. Now, it's not clear, and we had machloket in the Gemara. What does a shar mean, right? Does it mean a shar that gores a person or an animal, a shar that bites a person or steps on a person? That's really going to be the likely shot, is that it's a shar stepping on an animal. That's one, an animal causing damage. Habar, a pit, which is the second category I said. Ma'aveh. Now, ma'aveh is very unclear, and Rashi does not provide any guidance here. Rashi says mefarish b'gemara, right? We will explain this in the Gemara. Presumably, and we will discuss this because it's not so clear, it will mean another type of damage done by the shar, right? So as opposed to a shar using its body or its feet, one easy explanation, again, we will discuss this in the Gemara, is that ma'aveh refers to shame, to an animal eating something, which is not per se damaging, maybe, but I mean, damage is the thing it eats, right, by eating it. And the fourth category is ha'hever, which is fire, right? Says the Mishnah, really these four are three, okay? So lo hare hashar hare hama'aveh. The hare, or word hare is a little bit hard to translate, but I would say we usually translate as the responsibility. The things that make a shor chayav are not the same as the things that make a ma'aveh chayav, right? Where am I? Yeah. The low, and it's not clear why, because we don't know what ma'aveh means, right? So it's really hard to say what the Mishnah means by this. But the things that make a shor chayav are not the same as the things that make ma'aveh chayav, which are both two forms of damage by a shor. And lo, and the opposite is the same. Lo areya ma'aveh areya shor. Again, the Gemara will explain. But the Mishnah is saying you need to have both categories. And furthermore, these two categories, which are both an animal, lo zev zeh, meaning the first one and three, basically, shor and ma'aveh, are not the same. Sheish ben ruach chayim. They both come from an animal or even a person, let's just say, but something that has life, right? And choice, maybe, but life, let's say for sure. Those are not similar to hare ha'esh, which is what hever is, the fourth category in the Mishnah. Kein baruch chayim. Right? There's no person or object or living being behind the fire. You light a fire and you let it go, right? It's an indirect thing. So that's different. And all three of these, so the two shore categories and the fire, are different than a bar. These are all things that move and damage, right? Either an animal walks and damages, or a fire blows and damages. They are different than a bar. A bar does not travel to damage, it's fixed, and so it causes damage where it is. And so therefore, and Gemara is going to explain, therefore we need to say all these categories. Now, why we couldn't say some and learn the other, we'll discuss. All of these, Atzara Shavah Shaban, continues the Mishnah, the commonality of these four categories of damage are, Shedarkan Lahazik, they all are things that can be expected to cause damage, including an animal's feet, an animal's horns, an animal's teeth, a fire, a pit, and all of these Shmiratan Alecha. There's an owner. These are not hefker things, right? These are things that are owned, and there's an owner who has responsibility. Ukeshehizik, if these objects cause damage, chav hamazik l'shalim tashlumi nezik. The owner has to pay, not that the one who did damage, right? The fire did damage, but obviously the fire is not an object, right? That can pay. But when they cause damage, the mazik, meaning the owner, has to pay Tashlume nezek, you have to pay the damage of what damage you caused, the value. You have to pay b'meitav haaretz. You have to pay with good land. So if it cost $100 of damage, you can't just pay $100 of poor quality land, even if it's worth $100. You have to pay with good land, and we will discuss this, which we did already in Gittin and elsewhere, that you have to pay with the best land. Now, says the Gemara, with this very enigmatic Mishnah, midiktani avot. The fact that you use the word avot, as opposed to saying there's four types of nizikin, you said there are four avot. Avot generally implies that there's a tolda, right? There's a derivative, let's say. Michlal di'ika toldot. And the question is, what is the status of a tolda? Now, again, this is all very abstract because we don't yet know what the av is, right? But we're saying once we define the av, let's say the av is a shar biting a person. Let's just say that's an av. It might not be. So the tolda of that might be, I don't know, a person biting, or I guess it's not a good tolda, but it might be some other hashtacha. Let's say an av is a shar kicking a person, right, or kicking a animal. A tolda might be a shar kicking a rock that then hits a person, right, which is a second degree. So the question is, are the toldoteim ki yotzei behem olav ki yotzei behem? Are you chayav for a tolda the same way you'd be chayav for the av or not? Let's use that example, right? Which is a complicated example, where you have a av is kicking, a tolda, let's say, is kicking something that then hits the person. Okay, so is that considered to be the same status or not considered to be the same status? Now, Gabe Shabbat, where we are if you recall, by Shabbos we had this concept of avot melacha, right? Ditznan. We have a very important mission in Shabbat. Avot melachot arba'im chaser achat. There's 40 minus 1. There's 39 melachot of Shabbat that everybody knows. You're not allowed to plow and harvest and dig, etc., etc., etc. So are they ki yotzei behem or not? Hello, Miriam.
You started already?
I'm sorry, we started without you. We had in the bulletin at 7:15.
You sent in the chat 7:30.
Okay, so then we're going to start again for you. I'm sorry, I didn't remember that. Charlie, you didn't tell me that detail. But I typed it.
Maybe I got it. Yeah. Okay.
No. I didn't remember.
I mean, I was here and I was doing nothing.
I didn't remember that. I apologize. Totally on me. It's good. Charlie and I don't mind a quick review. So
thanks.
So I'm going to go from the beginning of the Mishnah. We really didn't get that far. We just read the Mishnah. We were giving a little background. You didn't miss it. Don't worry. We'll catch it all up. So it says the Mishnah. Let's start from the beginning and we'll fill in. Arba avot nizikin. There are four categories. Four avot, four fathers is literally what it means, right? But four families of nizikin. And they are, now as I said in the beginning, it's very confusing about what these are, because in theory, one formulation would have three categories of nizikin, and it's really important to keep this straight. As you probably have heard before, Bava Kamma is not easy, right? So the first category of damage is damage by a animal. The Torah talks a lot about this, right? If your shar gores or your shar attacks, etc. There's many types of damage that an animal can do, and we're eventually going to find three types. We're going to discuss this today too. called Shane, Regel, and Karen. Okay, but we'll get to there. The second category is fire, right? Which is something where you light a fire, your fire gets out of control and it goes and it burns a field or kills a person or does something. And the third category is a bar, something that is a pit that is essentially fixed, but it can cause damage because it's a hole in the ground, right? And of course, there's many versions of a bar. A banana peel might be a bar, right? But literally a bar means a hole in the ground. So that's three categories. Our Mishnah turns this into four categories, and we're going to discuss at length why we turn this into four categories. Says the Mishnah, Arba'a avot nizikin. There are four categories of damage. The first is hashar, an animal. Now, again, it's not clear right now what the animal did that's called a nezek. Is it an animal goring, an animal stepping, an animal eating? So let's just say shar. The second category is bar. You create a hole in the ground and something falls into that and gets damaged. The third is ma'aveh. Now again, ma'aveh is also unclear what this means. There will be a machloket in the Gemara. One explanation is that ma'aveh is eating, is the shame, the eating of a cat.
Okay.
It's a machloket, Rav and Shmuel. And the fourth category is hever, is fire. So that one's pretty clear. So again, two of these probably have to do with the shor, then there's bar, and then there's fire. Says the Mishnah, second line of the Mishnah, lo hare hashar ka hare hama'aveh. The things that make you chayav, in a shor, are not like the things that make you chayav in ma'aveh. I jumped the gun here again. So there are four categories, but the shor is not the same as ma'aveh. Lo hare ma'aveh ka hare hashar. So we just, good to see you, Robert. The first line of the Mishnah is that there are four avot nizikim. These are going to be set, I would say, fixed into our minds. Shor, bar, ma'aveh, and hever, right? And the first two, which are not the first two in order, are shor and ma'aveh, which both have to do with animals. They're not the same. And we don't know what they are, so it's hard to say that they're not the same. Continues the Mishnah at the third line. The two that we said first, the shor and the ma'aveh, are not the same. Those both come from an animal, or maybe a person, but certainly an animal. They're not the same as eish, which is the fourth one in the Mishnah. An eish doesn't have life, right? It's not a sentient being, let's say. So there is different. And lo zev v'zeh shedarkan leilech lahazik. These three categories, the first three, shor, ma'aveh, and hever, are all things that can travel and cause damage, right? A shor can walk and hurt someone. A fire can move and burn something. Those are similar, but they're different than the fourth case, which is the bar, right? She'ein darko le'lechu lahazik. I skipped a word. Kaharei habar, she'ein darko le'lechu lahazik. A bar is immobile. So a bar sits there and you fall into it, or an animal falls into it, or an object falls into it, but it doesn't move. Hatzada shavat shebehen, the commonality between all these different things, the shor, the bar, and the fire, is shedarkan lahazik. They're all things that could be expected to cause damage, which we're going to obviously discuss in the Gemara, things that are not expected to cause damage and what the implications are. And these are all things shmiratan alecha. You have you have responsibility to protect them. If you dig a hole in the ground, you got to make sure no one falls into it. If you have an animal, you got to make sure they don't go and hurt someone. And kishhizik, if they do cause damage, then chav hamazik l'shalim tashlumi nezek. The person who is responsible has to pay the damage, and they have to pay b'meitav haaretz. They have to pay with good land. One of the big problems that we've discussed a lot is that they didn't really use cash back then, right? So when you sold things, when you pay damage, you have to usually give something that's very fixed, which would be karka, which would be land, and you have to give good land. So you can't give low quality land and give a lot of it. You'd have to give the best land, and we'll discuss what that all means.
Well, as I pointed out a number of times, money had not been invented at the time of Matan Torah. So this may well be a very old Mishnah.
Well, correct. So, the tricky thing is you're going to see is that it's not so relevant about what's in the Mishnah. It's relevant what's in the pasuk, right? Because the pasuk, we'll see, discusses we derive from the pasuk, how you pay. So correct. So it could be they were using it in times of the Mishnah, but it didn't reflect what was in the Torah. Okay, says the Gemara. Midiktani avot, from the fact that our Mishnah used the word for avot, which is a funny, you could have said arba types, right? Why do we use the word avot? That's mechlal d'ika toldot. Whenever you say that there is a parent, it means that there must be an offspring, meaning a derivative. So like I was saying, that the Torah may say an animal shouldn't, if an animal steps on someone else, someone else's animal, you're chayav. But what if an animal steps on something that steps on something else? Or what if an animal kicks something, right? And that thing goes and damages someone. You're chayav for that too, presumably, because it's a tolda. The question of our Mishnah, a question of our Gemara, sorry, is toldotem ki yotzei behem olav ki yotzei behem? Are the toldot the same requirement? You pay the same damage for a tolda as you do for the av or not, right? Maybe you pay half damage. Maybe you pay nothing. Maybe, what's the status of a tolda? Says the Gemara, what's the precedent for this? Gabi Shabbat. It's not, right? In Shabbat, we have a Mishnah that says, Avot melachot arba'im chaser achat. By the Av Melacha of Shabbos, there's 39, 40 minus 1, right? And we know these, we memorized all these Av Melachot. Some people memorize them. I don't remember them. But anyways, Charisha and Ketzira, and I got 2. Okay, so keep going. So there's 39 Melachot. Now, why are they called Avot? Why do we say 39 Avot? Why do you say 39 Melachot? Avot, we learn in the same thing in Masechet Shabbat, Mechlal D'Ika Toldot. And by Shabbat, we know from learning Masechet Shabbat that Toldotehem ki yotzei behem, that a tolda on Shabbat is the same as the Av, right? Let's say a tolda, you're not allowed to squeeze out something, right? So that's a tolda of schita, let's say, of squeezing out, or it might not be, it might be of cleaning, whatever it's a tolda of, right? So the halacha is that loshna av chatat, loshna tolda chatat. If you do it by mistake, right, you bring a carbon chatat, whether you do the av melacha or you do the tolda of the melacha, right? And if you do it on purpose, loshna av skila, loshna tolda skila, we learned this in Shabbos, you would get killed for the tolda as well. So although there are avot melacha and toldot, they have the same punishment. So then why are they not called the same thing? Maishna bein av tolda. So why does it matter whether something is an av or a tolda? Nafkamina, it matters. Di'ilo avit shtei avot ba'adei hadadi. If you forget it's Shabbos and you do 2 avot at the same time, right, without separation. So let's say you forget it's Shabbos and you cook twice, right? Assuming that's bishul, let's say, is a melacha. You cook 2 things. You forgot it was Shabbos. You woke up, you thought it was Sunday morning. You cooked 2 things, you remembered it was Shabbos, right? Inami shtei toldot ba'adei hadadi. You do 2 second-degree cookings. Mechayev, you're chayev 1 time, right? I'm sorry, I take it back. I made a mistake. Not 2 cookings, 2 separate avot, right? You cooked and you cut down the tree, right? You woke up Shabbos morning, you thought it was Sunday, you did 2 totally separate melachot or 2 separate toldot. So then mechayev kol chada v'chada. You're chayev a carbon for each one, even though there's only one isser of Shabbos, right? We learned down in Masechet Shabbat that each av melacha is a type of melacha, and if you do several different types, you're chayav a karban for each one, right? However, ilu avid av v'tolda didei, if you did an av melacha and it's tolda, meaning you did the same derivation of the av, then lo mechayev elachada. Then you'd only be chayav once, so it's like cooking twice, right? If you cook twice, you'd be chayav only 1 time because you did 1 identical avera. If you're mechalel Shabbat twice, but you do it with 2 different avot, you'd be chayiv 2. So therefore, it really matters whether a melacha is part of 1 group or not, right? Because if it's part of 1 group, you only chayiv once. If it's part of 2 groups, you chayiv twice. So that's why we call it av in the tolda. It says right now, we just want to point out, according to Rabbi Eliezer in Masechet Shabbat, who says that that's not true, that in fact a tolda is considered a separate act than the av melacha, and you'd be chayiv twice. The mechayiv tolda b'makom av. He says you are chayiv a karban if you do a tolda on Shabbat in the same time that you do the av melacha. So now my karele av, my karele tolda. The answer is the following: Hach dahavi b'mishkan chashiva. There's a big debate in the Girsa here whether it should be v'chashiva, but things that happened in the Mishkan and were significant actions, kari le'av. That's considered av malacha. Hach de lo avim mishkan chashiva kari le'toda. Things that were not considered so important in the Mishkan, right? Then, or either they weren't done in the Mishkan, or they weren't considered important in the Mishkan. That's called a tolda. It's very interesting. But the bottom line is we have two Moshes here. But the bottom line is that in Shabbos, both for committing a malacha that's an av malacha, and committing a malacha that's a tolda, that's considered to be a derivative malacha, you're chayiv the exact same thing. You're chayiv a carbon if it's b'shogeg, you're chayiv misa if it's on purpose, if it's skila, if it's b'mezid. So there's really no difference between an av and a tolda, right? That's Shabbos. The counter side is by tuma, right? Remember, we've talked about ava tuma many, many times, right? And ava tuma means primary tuma. A rishon l'tuma means a second level tuma, and they're not the same, right? An ava tuma is mitame food. A rishon l'tuma is not mitame food, right? As those who learn tarot know. Says the bottom line now, bet amud aleph, gabi tuma tznan, first Mishnah in Kalim in Seder Tarot. Avot hatumot. There's the avot hatumot are the sheretz. Sheretz is an avatuma. Shechvat zera is considered avatuma, and tamei meit. Right, someone who touches a dead body. Remember, the dead body itself is called avi avot hatuma, but someone who touches the dead body is called an av hatuma. And says the Gemara on top of Daf Bet Amud Bet now, toldoteim lav kiyotei behem. The things that touch an avatuma that are called rishon l'tuma are not the same as the avatuma. They lose one level. And ilu av mitame adam v'kelim, an avatuma can make other objects tameh as a rishon, and ilu toldot are ochlinu mashkin mitame adam v'kelim lo mitame. In general, there's exceptions, but in general, a rishon l'tuma is not mitame people or kelim, only food, right? Exceptions, of course, are kudshim and things like that. But the question is, hachamai, what about here by nizikin? What about here in Bava Kamma, right? The Mishnah says that there are 4 avot nizikin. We haven't quite defined what they are yet. But we also know that by using the word avot nizikin, you're telling us that there are toldot of nizikin. There are second level damages that you have to worry about. Are those second level damages the same, or are they not the same? Are you chayav like the Av as would be by Shabbos, where a Tolda is chayav just like the Av? Or is it like Tuma, where the Tolda is not as severe as the Av, and you're chayav either not at all, or you're chayav less, or something is different? Says Rav Papa, very important words that we're going to have to explain over the next couple of days. Amar Rav Papa, the 4th line from the top, it depends. Yesh mehen kiyotzei behem, v'yesh mehen lav kiyotzei behem. Some examples are the same. The Tolda is the same as the Av. And some examples, the Tolda is not the same as the Av. Okay? Now, the Gemara, of course, is going to explain that. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. So let's go back to a Braita, which is going to hopefully help us explain our Mishnah. Says the Braita, Shalosh Avot Nemru Bashar. Okay? Now, again, our Mishnah said there's 4 Avot Nizikin. And I told you it's a little complicated because 2 of them have to do with the shor, probably. One is a bar and one is a fire, right? Says this Braita, well, there's actually 3 categories that have to do with the shor. Now, this is very confusing because if there are 3, why did our Mishnah say 2 of them? Why didn't our Mishnah say 1 or say 3, right? Why don't we say that? We'll keep discussing this. But what does the Braita say? Shalosh avot namrush b'shar. There's 3 categories of damage that a shor, a cow, can do. Hakeren, one is a horn of a cow, which can obviously cause damage. A second is the shane of a cow, the tooth of a cow, right, which can cause damage. Ve'haregel, and the foot of an animal, which of course can step on things and cause damage, right? So these are 3 types of damage that can be done by an animal. Says the Braita, keren minalan. How do we know what a keren is referring to? Right? Well, no. How do we know that you're chayav if an animal uses a keren to cause damage? Where does the Torah say that if an animal uses its horn to cause damage that you're chayav? It Says the Gemara, says the Braita still, Tanu Rabbanan, Ki Yigach, right? It says Ki Yigach Shor at Shor Chavero, right? If an animal Yigach, now we translate Yigach as meaning goring, right, with its horn. How do you know that? It says the Braita Ein Negicha Ela B'Karen. Negicha, the word Nagach means goring with a horn. How do we know that? Shenemar, based on this very funny pasuk, where it says, the Yaslo Tzidkiyo ben Kenana, Karnei Barzel. Tzidkiyo ben Kenana was trying to give a parable to the people, and he made horns out of Barzel. What's Barzel? Bronze, right? Vayomer, and he said, Ko Amar Hashem, God said, Be'ela tinagach et Aram. I will use these horns to be nagach Aram, their enemy, right? So there you see that nigicha is something that's done with horns, because clearly he made horns and then made this thing. The Omer, and further, another proof, says the Braita, is the pasuk that we just had in Zot HaBracha. It says, Bechor Shoro Hadarlo, that he was a Bechor of a Shor, right? This by Yosef, the Karnei Re'im Karnav, and his horns were Karnei Re'im. He had horns of Re'im. So Bahem Amim Yonagach, he will use those to be Yinnagach. So again, you see from this second pasuk that the word Nigicha is referring to using your horns. Now ask the Gemara, Maiva Omer, why do you need a second pasuk to prove that the word Nigicha is referring to horns? Just to catch us up, we are on Amabet, Bet Amabet, and around 10 lines from the top, sorry. And the big question comes to this. The Torah says, Ki yinagach ishar ish, well, Ki yinagach ashar someone else. We'll see the case. There's another animal. Then you are chayiv, right? You're chayiv to pay. The pasuk talks about how much you have to pay. So the question is, what does that mean? Ki yinagach, right? When a shar gores. Right, what's that referring to? So we just brought two proofs, one from a pasuk in Yirmiyahu and one from a pasuk in Zot HaBracha, that the word nigicha is referring to the horns of, in both cases, they're not real horns. They're both horns that we sort of metaphysical or metaphorical horns, right? Says the Gemara, why do you need two proofs for that? Maiva Omer, the Chitema, well, you might have thought that bringing a proof from Yirmiyahu is really not that good. Because divrei Torah mi divrei Kabbalah lo yafina, right? We don't like proving what the Torah means. The Torah says the word yinagach, right? Or yigach, sorry, not yinagach, yigach. That we don't like to define words in the Torah relying on the Navi. It's not powerful. So we bring a pasuk from Zot HaBracha. So Tashma bechor shoro hadarlo. Says Gemara, well, that doesn't really explain it at all, because we're not trying to prove what the Torah means from the pasuk. We're not trying to derive the meaning of the Torah from the Nevi'im, right? The intent. We're just trying to understand the definition of the word, right? Hai Melefu, this is not a derivation that the Navi is revealing, what the Torah meant to say. It's Gilei Milta Ba'almahu. It's just trying to explain to us what the word means, that Nigicha is B'Karenhu, right? It's just clarifying that when you say the word Nigicha, you're using a horn. So it's not that we're learning, the Navi is telling us what the Torah means. The Navi is just explaining to us how you use terminology, what the word means. So that's not a good explanation. We would be able to use the Navi pasuk to explain this Torah pasuk because we're just trying to reveal what we mean. Giloi milta ba'alma. Ella, the reason we have to bring a second pasuk is ma'adatema, I would have thought, ki palig rachmana bein tam lemu'ad. Right, as we're going to see, again, the Gemara here is assuming that you know a lot of things, and it's okay, we don't need to know any of this because the Gemara is going to teach it all to us, but it's going to be a little hard, right? Remember that the pasuk, if you go through Mishpatim, which we probably should go through, discusses different types of payment that a person has to pay for the damage that their shar caused, right? And we're going to learn later that if a shar is a tam, a shar is a naive shar, meaning it has not been proven to cause damage, and it damages somebody else's shar, someone else's animal, then you have to pay only half of the damage, chatzi nezek, right? But an animal that is considered to be a mu'ad, meaning it is a designated shar for damage, has a bad reputation, then you have to pay more. You have to pay the full damage. That's the Torah says that, right? Now, one type of damage that a shar does is damage through its horn. I might have thought, says the Gemara, fascinating thing, that the only time you have to pay full damage for an animal through its horn is if it's not natural, meaning if it's carrying well, let me phrase that. I might have thought the opposite, that for a tam, that the only time that you get to pay half of damage is if your shar picks up a piece of metal on the ground and runs up to another shar and stabs it with it, right, through its mouth. That's how a shar would carry it, which would be reasonable to say, wow, that's a really unusual thing for my shar to do. I didn't expect it to do it, in which case I might not have full culpability because some of that's sort of out of my hands. But if my shar used its horn, which is a normal way for a shar to damage somebody else, and went over to damage some other shar, I might have to pay full damage even if it's a tam, right? Why? Because it's the natural way a shar does damage, and therefore you have to protect for it, right? So we're going to see this principle that the more unnatural the act, the less culpability you have, right? Which is the difference between a tam and a mu'ad, because we don't really expect you to have to watch out for this because it's so uncommon. So you might have thought that when the Torah says "Chiyigach shor," that when a shar gores, it's referring to not gores with its own horns, but gores with the horn that it picked up from the ground and ran forward, put it in its mouth and ran forward and attacked somebody. Because that's the case in the Navi, right? That's the Navi, it was fake horns. They put horns and they showed the act. So had you only proven the case from the Navi, I would have thought that that's the limitation when the Torah says you're chayav for goring an animal goring. So I might have thought, Hani Mili, I'll read it inside. Ma'adatema, Kipalag Rechmana Bein Tam Mu'ad. When the Torah says, oh, there's a difference, that you pay half damage if it's a tam and full damage if it's a mu'ad, that's only Hani Mili B'tzlusha. That's only in an unusual case where it's talking about a horn that's not attached to the cow's head, that it picked up off the ground and it went to gore someone with, because it's weird. Aval b'michuberet, if it's a horn that's attached to the cow's head, I might have thought kula mu'edati, that every case is a mu'ad, and even if your cow never has hurt someone before and goes over and gores another cow, maybe you should pay full damage. Kamashmalan that you don't. That's why I brought the second pasuk. That's not the case. Okay, so that is Tashma b'chor shoro hardarlo. So that is the case of Karen. That is the av of Karen is a horn. If a cow gores another animal or a person too, but let's say another animal because that's more relevant now, then you're chayav for the av of Karen. What is tolda de Karen, Mahi? Right? What is considered to be a tolda, a derivative, a second level of the av of Karen? That is if an animal causes damage with its own body, but without its horn. So, for example, nigifa. If it goes, nigifa is where it uses its body to push against something, right? Which could be very, very painful, especially if it's a 10,000-pound cow, right? Or nishicha, or a bite, or rivitza. If the cow, rivitza means that it sits down on you, right? Crouches down. So again, if you're sitting under that cow, you're in big trouble.
Squatting,
thank you. Ubi'ita, or kicking. So any
I
other...
grew up around dairy farms. I was afraid of those cows. They're big.
Right, fair enough. Well, that's going to come in too. We'll see, but you're a person. Question is, are cows scared of cows? But we're going to make that difference in a second. So anyways, in all of these cases, these are all called toldot of the of horn. So the goring is called Karen, right? Any tolda of Karen is an animal physically hurting something else, either by pushing against it, by kicking it, by biting it, or by crouching down on it. Okay. Now it says the Gemara, slow down. Why in the world do you say why shna nigicha, which is goring? Remember the kari le'av dichtiv ki yigach. Right? The Torah says if a shor is yigach, you have to pay, but the Torah also says ki yigof. Right? I just told you nigifa means pushing against it with the body. Nigifa namichtiv, the Torah says, ki yigof. So why isn't that an av also? Why is nigifa, which means an animal pushing its body against another object, let's say another animal, why is that considered a tolda if the Torah says it explicitly. The Torah says ki yigof. Says the Gemara, and that's not what the Torah means when it says ki yigof. Hai negifa, negichahi. When the Torah says ki yigof, it means when it gores. It doesn't mean when it pushes its body. How do we know? The Tanya, because the Braita says that explicitly. Says the Braita, patach b'negifa v'siyem b'negicha. If you look, I don't have a Gemara with the psukim, but if you look in that pasuk in Mishpatim, it starts off by saying ki yigof, and then it continues on and says ki yigach. Okay, it's the same pasuk, right? It starts off. I'm reading the pasuk now in Rashi. Ki yigof shar ish et share'eyu, o noda ki shar nagachu. It's not the same pasuk. It's later on, right? Or you find out that it was a shar nagach. So nigifa means the same thing as nigicha, which we just proved nigicha means goring, right? So why does it speak that way? The Tanya, the Braita explains, patach b'nigifa v'sayim b'nigicha. The Torah uses the word nigifa first, ki yigof, and then it finishes by saying it's a shar nagach. Lomar lecha, to tell you, zuhi nigifa, zuhi nigicha, that in this pasuk, in this case, nigifa means nigicha, it means goring, not using your body. Now, why? So maishna gabe adam dichtiv ki yigach. Why is it that when you talk about a shar attacking a person, it says ki yigach to mean goring it? Umaishna gabe behima, when it talks about another animal, dichtiv ki yigof, right? Why does it use a different word? Because, explains the Gemara the following: Adam itle mazla tiv ki yigach, behema the letle mazla tiv ki yigof. The difference is the following: that by an Adam who has mazel, now it's a little bit unclear what that means exactly, right? What does it mean, Adam itle mazel? So Rashi explains that a person has, Rashi doesn't understand mazel here to mean luck. Rashi understands mazel here means sort of intelligence, awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very interesting because we just saw in the last dapim of Kiddushin that it specifically says luck or whatever it is that is kind of predestined in your life. So how does he decide that now it means intelligence?
I don't know the answer. It's a good question. I mean, from the context here, it's probably what it means, though there are those who disagree. But let me translate it, and then we could try to see. But the difference, basically, what Rashi explains, and Mark's explaining, is that the difference between using the word yigach and the word yigof is that yigach implies intent to cause damage, right? So when you think of a cow just walking along and hitting you with its head and hurting you with its horns, that's where we would use the word ki yigaf, right? Remember, yigaf means uses its body to cause damage. So here it means the horns, but that's part of the body. Yigach is like when you think of an animal in the rink, right? In the whatever it's called, with the, I'm not there, the running of the bulls, right? So yigach there means that it's actually intent to come and gore you. It's angry and it's coming rushing at you. So therefore, what it's teaching us basically is that it's very difficult, it's very unlikely for an animal to hurt a person unless it's coming after them to hurt them. Because people, as Charlie said, are scared of animals, right? And so you're not going to stand right next to this animal casually. Maybe that's what Rashi said, it's le mazla, right? That people, and Miriam, it can mean a similar thing, though, that maybe that's where the mazel comes from, right? It comes from some awareness and alertness and different risk profile, let's say, right? In terms of being around things. So an animal that hurts a person is much more likely to be committed to hurting that person, right? Because otherwise the person would be able to avoid it. But an animal that hurts another animal might just be, they're sort of casually standing next to each other and it turns and hits them with the horn, which can cause damage, right? So that's what we're learning. Milta agavorche kamashman, it's teaching you in the pasuk something interesting. Dimuad la'adam havi muad lebehima. That if you have an animal that has hurt a person before, then it certainly is considered to be suspicious to hurt animals, right? But the opposite is not true. Mu'ad lebehima lo havi mu'ad la'adam. An animal that has a bad reputation because it's consistently hurting other animals may not be considered a mu'ad to kill a person, because we expect people to have higher levels of protection against animal damage than another animal. So just because this animal has hurt many other animals and made itself a mu'ad, doesn't necessarily mean that by hurting a person, by killing a person in this case, it would be a mu'ad for killing that person. If you recall, Rashi points out here, but this again is from the Psukim, an animal that kills a person, you kill the animal, right? So it's not like it matters whether it's a mu'ad or a tam, but the owners don't have to pay, right? If the animal has never hurt a person before or is a tam for people, then although you kill the animal, you don't have to pay a kofer. But if the animal is considered to be an animal that's a mu'ad, and then it kills another person, then not only does the animal chayav mita, but the owners are chayav death. And we explain they don't have to get killed, but they pay a penalty, a kofer. So anyways, that's why we learned something agav, that just because an animal is known to hurt other animals does not prove that it's going to be known to hurt people. But that is how, so now back to the big picture, right? The word
I want to jump in here. So the domestic animals in the time of the Talmud, with the exception of dogs, are vegetarians and would not naturally need to hurt people. And even dogs were pretty domesticated and do not need to eat meat. But some wild animals are carnivorous and would have been killing and eating other animals from the time they were born, practically.
So I think what you're saying is true. I don't have other information, but again, I don't think the Mishnah or the Gemara is thinking of animals killing people in order to eat them, right? They're killing them because one animal is 6,000 pounds and they get excited and hit a person.
I think you're right, but a tiger ought to be considered a muad. You would not have found Jews owning tigers.
No, the Mishnah will talk about it is true. Tigers are muad. We'll discuss it. It actually comes up later, not necessarily tiger, but wild animals. But just going back to where we started, right? So remember that Rav Papa started us off by saying that the fundamental question we had today, and we'll have today, is there's an av for damage and there's a tolda. Is the tolda equivalent to the av, right? And Shabbos, a tolda of a melacha is the same as an av melacha. You chayev for each one independently. In Tum'ah, a tolda is a lower level than an av. What's the status by damage? So Rav Papa said, well, it depends. Some cases it's the same, and some cases it's not the same. So now we're trying to go through to find the avot and the toldot and see if they're the same or not the same. So the first case we came to was animals, shor. And we said there's three kinds of avot within a shor, right? They are goring, which is Karen, the horn. Shane, we don't know what Shane means yet, but it might mean eating things. And regel, okay? So we then said that those are three avot. The av of Karen means goring. What is the tolda of Karen? The tolda of Karen is using an animal's body to cause damage, either stepping on something, crouching on something, pushing against something. So the question now is, what are you chayav if your animal steps on something? Is it the same as if it gores something, right? So says the Gemara, it doesn't say anything, sorry, period. So tolda d'shein, ask the Gemara, sorry, nishicha, right? You said that one of the cases is biting something, but why isn't that a tolda of shein, right? It sounds a lot like teeth of an animal. Why is it a tolda of Karen, right? Says Gemara, no, it's not tolda d'shein. Lo, shein yesh hana lahazika. What shein really refers to is an animal getting benefit when it eats, right? So in order to be a tolda of shein, you don't just have to use your teeth to cause damage. If an animal uses its teeth and just causes damage to a person, let's say, and is not eating them, as Charlie pointed out, because they're not eating people, or another animal, which they're not eating, that's not a tolda of shein. Tolda of shein is if an animal goes and eats fruits, right, and causes damage because it ate all your food, then that's shein. That's not a tolda. So shein refers specifically to an animal getting benefit. Goring an animal doesn't give it any benefit, right? It just causes damage. So therefore, biting something is considered a tolda of Karen, right? Ha ein hana'a lehazeka. In biting something, you get no benefit. And ask the Gemara, what about revitza or be'ita? Using the body or crouching down, aren't those toldot regeli? Right? Aren't those similar to stepping on something? And the answer is no, because regel has zika matsui. When we talk about regel, we're referring to an animal walking down the road and stepping on something, which is very common because animals are expected to step on things, right? They don't fly. And so if your animal is walking through someone's field, it's going to step on their pumpkins, right? It's going to cause damage. But not every animal crouches down. It's considered to be an unusual action if it crouches down on the pots, right? So hani ein hazikan matzoi, right? So these are not common, but you would be chayav for the tolda the same way you're chayav for the av, right? So this is an example where tolda is similar to Shabbos, that you're chayav for the tolda just like the av. Ask the Gemara, what about the other case? Where do you ever find a tolda that's not the same as the av? Ella toldoteim lav ki yotzei b'hem damar Rav Papa ahai. When Rav Papa said tolda is not like the av, what was he referring to? Ilema, we are 7 lines from the bottom, the first word on the line. Ilema ahani, right? If he's referring to these, meaning these toldot, like crouching and pushing and biting, why would you not be chayav for them? Maishna, Keren, remember the fundamental category of Keren, of using a horn to gore, is the kavanato lahazik. The animal wanted to cause damage, right? Umimoncha ushmirato alecha. You own the animal. You are supposed to watch the animal, and therefore you have to pay. Here too, if an animal crouches down, haninami, kavanatan lahazik, the intent, now again, it's hard to know what the animal's intent was, but the explicit implication of the act is to cause damage, umimoncha ushmiratan alecha, and therefore you should be chayav. So there's no reason why you would be chayav less for an animal that crouches down on somebody and damages it than if it gored it and damaged it. So that's not an example of Rav Papa saying they're not the same. Ella, it must be tolda to Keren ki Keren. It must be that the tolda of the malacha of Keren is the same chiyuv as Keren, and chika amar Rav Papa ashen v'regel, right? It must be that Rav Papa was referring to the other categories, to the categories of an animal using its teeth, which we think again means eating things, and regel, which is the animal walking along, and steps on things. There, the toldot are not like the avot. Ask the Gemara, what are those? Shein v'regel hechiktivi. Now, where does the Torah talk about an animal using its mouth, its teeth, or its feet to cause damage? To Tanya, the Braita says, it says in the pasuk vishalach, right? The words literally it says vishalach et habi'ira. You send off, which literally means the fire. So we're going to have to discuss this in further detail. This is Zeha Regel. That's not referring to the fire. That's referring to the feet. Shalach means go, right? You travel. It's referring to the regel of the shore. The Chenu Omer, and there's a pasuk in Yeshayahu that says, Mishalchei Regel Hashor V'Chamor, right? You sent off the feet of the shore and the chamor. Then the pasuk continues and says, you sent off the fire, ubi'er b'stei acher. It burns. Says the Braita that doesn't mean it's a fire. Again, we're going to ask all these questions because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Ubi'er means zu hashem. That means it's eating the food in someone else's field. The Chenu Omer, and we found the pasuk that says, kasher yivaer hagalal ad tumo. As you eat the thing until it's finished, implying that it really means a fire there, but it's similar to eating it, okay? So these are psukim, which seem to be talking about a fire, which the Braita is referring, says, do not mean a fire. They mean the animal walking, that's regel, and their animal biting, which is shein. Tomorrow, we're about to ask, we're going to start with Amar Mar, and ask how in the world does it mean that? Doesn't it mean something else? Doesn't it mean fire? And what are the cases of the av, of a shor that walks and bites? And what are the toldot? And are they similar or not similar? So we will pick this up tomorrow. We are going to learn tomorrow in the evening. I hope everyone can join. I'm not so committed to the time, so let's figure out a time that works for everyone.
Anything.
7 p.m. Does that work?
For me, yes. You're on mute, Charlie.
Later would be better for me.
Later than 7?
Yeah.
Evening will not be good for me, but I'll just catch a recording.
So nothing in the evening is good for you?
For me, no.
Got it. Okay. Any last vote?
Do what's best for the majority.
It's hard to
I'll
find.
catch-
Maybe it's
I mean, for
very-
me, anything past 10:15 in the morning is good. So
Charlie, how late is good for you?
Well, I'm a night owl. I'd do it at 10 o'clock if you wanted
Yeah,
to, but I know
think we're gonna
I
veto.
know
you
that
do
I'm
it at
not equal.
midnight too.
You want to do 7:30? Is that better than 7?
7:30 is better than 7. Yes.
Okay, Miriam.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, no one else is voting. I guess we're gonna say 7:30 p.m. I'll put it in the
Great.
Chat.
Great.
chat.
Thank you.
Shavua tov, everyone.
Shavua tov. Thank you, Ellie.
Okay.